you're just becoming a celebrity these days. Like what's been the change? Are you just becoming more vocal, or people just finding out? I don't know.
Yeah, I put an article out on LinkedIn the other day that was talking about how I found my voice. And I think I've been having conversations with people about it, but I think it's a combination of, I've always had a point of view, but I was not confident enough to share the point of view. And my point of view is pretty like strong. Like, I feel like I have like a lot to say, but I was kind of always a little bit nervous or apprehensive about sharing my point of view, because I don't think I was ready for like people disagreeing with me and the conflict and the tension that could arise. But I feel a little bit more confident and prepared to do that now. So I feel like I can have conversations that can end ultimately with, okay, we can agree to disagree. We don't see that thing the same way. But before, I wasn't confident enough to do that. I just felt very uncomfortable with people being like, no, diversity is not an issue. What are you talking about? And then I would be like, oh, I don't know what to say. So now I know what to say. I feel better about, I have more information, more facts, more knowledge, and I feel better about being able to defend my point of view.
So tell me a little bit about that experience, and just like in what situations did you necessarily feel uncomfortable, and why did you feel uncomfortable with that conflict?
Yeah, I would say, if I think about it in the workplace, I attended so many meetings, just like I'm sure everybody else does. And I would sit in the meetings and I would be like, my internal voice would be saying, oh, I don't agree with that. Or, oh, if that person only knew, or, like I'd have something to say, but I wouldn't say it. And I think, like I said, I'm somebody who likes to be prepared, and I like to be, have all the facts. And I probably wouldn't disagree with the person unless I knew I was like 110% correct. Like that's a fear that I have, that it's like, what if I'm wrong? But I've met a lot of people, and I'm sure you have too, Pavel, that they don't have all the facts, and and they're actually not even right half the time, but they have no fear in their heart to just speak their mind and say their piece. So I was like, yeah, I could do that too then. I modeled up myself after those people that were like, throw caution to the wind, and I'm gonna interject with my point of view, based on the things I know. There's some things I'm not gonna know, and so that'll inform my point of view some more. But yeah, I feel like now I feel better, and it's good because I'm in a position that's very visible. Like, I deal with customers every day, and I cannot, remain on the sidelines. That's not really an option for me. I need to, have a point of view, share it, share my knowledge, talk about what I see with other customers. So I can't just be like, oh, fulana just sitting there taking notes or something. No, I gotta, speak up. And that's
I love that. And I'm wondering why, because I think sometimes it's, at least for me, I had that same perspective, and I think some of it was culturally, just like what we were taught as far as like, keep your head down, just work. Like, is that sort of like where that started?
Yes. So everybody says the saying in Spanish, calladita te ves más bonita. That is actually not the one I grew up with. So that one's like, you look prettier when you're quiet, but that's not the one I grew up with. My mother used to say, en boca cerrada no entra mosca. And it's like,
no entra mosca.
Yeah, so if you keep your mouth shut, you won't have an unpleasant experience. A fly won't come into your mouth, which, it's not literal, but it's like, I guess if you keep quiet, you don't run the risk or the chance of having something unpleasant occur. And that's exactly, I think, where I stood. That's what I was grounded in, is that if I don't have that, exchange, or if I don't say anything, then I won't have to worry about the conflict that could follow, or the disagreement that could follow. And so that is kind of how I grew up. And I remember that a lot, but, now I feel that, that's not, like I said, it's not really an option anymore. And it's not where I want, we're talking about authenticity, which is like what you're all about and what your show's all about. That's not who I am at all. I'm someone who has something to say, and I want to say it.
Yeah, no, I love that you touched on the word authenticity, because I do want to get into that definition, because I feel like everyone has such a different definition. And like, authenticity is not just about culture, but it's just like about our values and so many different things. But when you think of the word, like, what comes to mind for you? Like,
yeah, I thought about it in preparation for our conversation. So there's a lot of things that come up for me. I would say the word that comes up the strongest for me is freedom. Just like being free, like being able to be free to be who you are, to speak candidly, to share your perspective. So the freedom is a big one. I think acceptance is another one. So it's like, we're not perfect. We're not like each other. I don't talk like you. I'm not maybe as polished as you. I don't look like you. My hair's different from you. My lips are different from yours. I don't know. Like, I don't, there's a lot of things that make me who I am that makes me different from my peers and my colleagues. But accepting who I am and loving who I am is a big part of authenticity for me. And just, being unapologetic, like, this is me, take it or leave it. Like, you don't have to love it. And, I think that's okay. I think a lot of times early in our career, we want people to like us. We don't want people not to like us. Like, we don't want to be that person that people are like whispering about. But the day has to come where you have to stand in your truth, and, good, bad, or ugly, that's who you are. So I feel like, also authenticity is about rejecting false narratives. So it's like, that is not true about me. Like, you can say a lot of things about me, but the thing you just said, that part is not true. So I'm going to call you out on it, or I'm going to, reject it outright. And and then just be transparent about the things that you need. And I think that's being authentic too. And I'm going to talk a lot about that today. Being transparent with what you need, because that is something I did not do for a very long time, and it only hurt me. So like, no one else, I don't think, got affected by it except for me. But for some reason, I felt like I was like a poker player, and I'm like, oh, I won't let people know how I feel. I won't let people know what I need. I'm going to kind of keep that to myself. And I don't know, maybe it was the boca cerrada no entre moscas. There was that concept where it was like, I'm just going to zip it and nobody needs to know. But that was just a bad strategy, and it didn't work out. It didn't work out well for me.
There's so many things you mentioned there, and maybe we can start with the differences for you in a professional setting. Did you notice immediately the differences, or did that, when did you notice that?
Honestly, I think I noticed it when I was in college, because I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, New York City girl. And I went to public school my whole life. And always that, for me, that meant, everybody and their mother, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, everybody from all over the universe, was in school with me. And then when I got to college, I went to Manhattan College, small college in the Bronx.
Yeah, and it's right by me. I live in Riverdale.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's in Riverdale. So Manhattan College, I don't know what it's like now, but when I went back in the 90s, it was not very brown or Black. And so being in that space, I remember how I felt. And I felt so out of my element in that school. And, for a lot of reasons, people are raised differently. People were already drinking, where I didn't even drink when I was in college. You know what I mean? Like, I grew up in a house where that was not a thing. So like, the concept like of how people partied, of how people related, of things that people were experimenting with. I just was like in a completely different page. And I feel a lot of that was because of the way I was raised. And so I think for me, it was back then that I had like the clash. And then I learned a little bit about how to assimilate when I was in school, and how to like not be like, feel, like the odd person in the circles that I ran in. And then by the time I got to working, I thought I had it all like figured out. But then I went to Anderson Consulting, which was my first job. And that was a little bit different for me for a different reason. It was also that there wasn't a lot of brown and Black people. That is fair statement to make. But it was also even more than that, because the people that I was around made me question my abilities. And so it's like what the people, the young people these days call like the imposter syndrome. Yeah. I felt that as soon as I got to Anderson Consulting, I was like, oh my God, like, how am I I don't think I'm going to make it here. And anyway, I can't even get into all the gory details, because it brings back really bad memories for me, but it was not a good scene at all.
No, and yeah, we don't have to get into those specific details, but tell me a little bit about that assimilation, because I think that's an important piece to highlight as well. Because I always tell the story, like, I dedicated time on the weekends to like literally study white American pop culture just to be able to go into rooms and be relatable. Like, to what extent did you go to assimilate?
Yeah, I would say I didn't have to do that, because I actually had friends and co-workers that I hung out with. And so I just, I just kind of learned about things from them. So, I mean, I feel like I experienced the things that non-brown and Black people usually don't experience. I just experienced it because I would hang out with my friends and I ended up in different circles. I ran in different circles and experienced different things. And I think that is how I learned a lot about like the culture outside of like the Latinx culture from like New York City.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. Well, that's good. Well, at least you didn't waste time that way. But
No,
then I think
I've read your stuff, Pavel, and it makes me really sad that that happened to you, that you felt like you had to do that, and that, that's hard. That's like a really hard thing, and it's a sad thing that some people, like that you have to have that experience, or that we have to have that experience somewhere by hook or by crook. We have to learn how to coexist. And so for some people, like it's doing it the way you do it, but for some people it'll be the way I do it. I'm sure there's like other ways that people have found themselves integrating into like, the mainstream of corporate America. But it is a reality for brown and Black folk. No question about it.
Yeah. And, part of that for me was like, yeah, I wanted to fit in, but it was also kind of that imposter syndrome that you mentioned. Like for me, that was my defense mechanism. I was like, well, if they don't think that I can do the job, well, at least they'll like me, and I think imposter syndrome is such a like interesting topic, because I think at least for me, I don't know what your experience was, but it came from both sides, right? Like for me, I would look around and say, oh, whoa, these people are doing such amazing work. There's no way that I can do that. But that was my own voice in my head, right? But then there would be like either directly or indirectly, people would tell me that I like didn't belong there. Like, was it more so like the voice in your head for you, or do you think it was more so like certain like feedback that wasn't placed on you correctly?
Yeah, I feel mostly it was me. It was the voice in my head. I think occasionally people made some comments or remarks that made me feel excluded. Random things. I've written about this before and I've shared it also, but making comments about my hair, making comments about like, oh, you're Hispanic, so therefore surely this is true about you. And it was like, I don't even know you. What are you talking about? Like you don't know me and I don't know you. Or these microaggressions where people kind of in an underhanded way, kind of they're complimenting you, but they're also like saying the thing that the bias that they held, the unconscious bias that they may hold against people, like us. So I do feel like, as a person who is probably more fair than you, there are probably some circles that I could enter and maybe pass. But I feel like in the end, that is not true to me. So I never chose that path. Like, I'm going to give you an example. Mm-hmm. And it's actually a very specific example, so some people might actually know who I'm talking about, but I don't even care. There's a person that had a last name. The last name is Garcia. That's a Latino last name by any standard. That's a Latino last name. This person chose to go by the last name. He pronounced it Garcia. I'm not lying. And he chose to kind of go this other path where I feel like he was not acknowledging like his roots or like who he was. And I was just, like I looked at that and I was like, that is not what I'm choosing for me. I am going to be Hady Mendez. I'm the Puerto Rican from Brooklyn. I walk into all my meetings and I say, hola, anybody who works with me at work, my account execs, anybody, even my customers, like I'll always be like, hola, like that is how I choose to enter spaces. That is how I choose to identify and be. And I don't know that I would be capable of like denying that part of me.
Yeah, that's so unfortunate. I haven't seen it necessarily for last names, but I have heard experiences for first names. Like often people would shorten their first name in an effort to make it easier for people to pronounce. Like I have a friend, she was actually on the podcast. Her name is Montserrat. but she would shorten it to Monse just to make it easier for people to be
Oh
like,
yeah,
how do you?
I do that too.
Yeah.
So my full name is Hadila, but I no one knows that, and I never go by that name. That is like my legal name. 99.9% of the people who know me would never know that that's my name. I am Hady.
I never knew that.
Yep.
That's so interesting. When did you make that change? Or was that always like a nickname for you growing up, potentially?
Yes, it was always a nickname.
Okay.
In school, I would say I didn't know when I was a kid that I could tell people, call me Hady. So people call me Hadila or like some version of that, and pretty much messed it up. Yeah. But then when I think by the time I got to college, I was just like, I'm Hady. You call me Hady. Like that's easier. That's, you know, and then it went from there.
So where the hell did you get the confidence to start embracing all of those different parts of your identity? Like when did that start?
I've been reflecting a lot about that. And some of it has to do with just the different parts of my journey. I've actually been on mission. I don't know if you know that about me, but I was an international volunteer. I was a missioner. I spent 2 years in Bolivia working with incarcerated women. And I learned a lot about myself through that experience. I don't know if you've ever like lived in another country and had to like kind of reinvent your life. But that's what happened to me. Like I had to go there and like learn how to be. And yeah, I think for me, it ended up really teaching me a lot about myself. And I think interacting with people that are in a very sort of unique situation. When people are in jail, I don't know if you've ever like known or met people in prison and what those people are like, but the vulnerability and you know, the kinship that I experienced with the women during my volunteer time, which was for 2 years, that really taught me a lot about myself. We also, as we prepare to go on mission, do a lot of like personality tests and like, you know, assessments. And you know, we also speak very, you know, frankly and candidly about like, what is it like to have privilege and not to have privilege, and entering into other people's spaces. And it's like, I'm going to another country. I have to respect like what's happening in that country. Anyway, I think a lot of that was a very good learning experience for me. I also worked at a school that focused a lot on social emotional behavior for children. And I really learned a lot from the children because they were always told, use your words, use your words. And I'm like, that is such a like, how come nobody told me that when I was 10? That would have been pretty handy to have all this time. And I feel like I would see the children use their words, and sometimes they were saying things that were really hard, but they would say them. And I think that really like had a very strong impact on me too. So I think all of that really helped me. And then just realizing that even though I didn't know everything about every topic, I knew enough that I could say something. And I was, in fact, a subject matter expert, am a subject matter expert in some areas that, you know, I feel like I could firmly say that and be saying the truth. So I learned that also over time.
That's such a fascinating experience that I think not a lot of people get to experience. And you said that you learned so much, you know, not just about the world and different cultures, but also just about yourself, right? Like, what were some things that you learned just about yourself and your personal growth, you know?
Well, so I actually took some notes. Do you mind if I like read from them? Because I think it's really good. And it was like reflection that I did in preparation, like for this conversation, but like, I think it answers your question directly. So
yes, please.
What I learned is that my authentic self is not perfect. That's one thing I learned about myself. And that sometimes I want to give up and run away. That happens to me. Like, it is a true story that sometimes like, I just don't want to deal with the hard stuff. And I'm someone who really yearns acceptance and love. I'm sure like that's quite a common like human thing, but I'm like right there with everyone else in that regard. And that I also feel a lot of pressure. And it's a lot of pressure because I feel like I'm representing Latinas in all the spaces that I enter. And I know this is a conflict that a lot of Black and brown people have when they enter spaces. It's like people are judging us for like the whole like population. And it's like, I have to be really like on point at all times because this might be the only impression that people have of a Latino. I might be the only Latina that they know or they talk to regularly. So I want to make sure that I'm always making like the best impression, and that's a lot of pressure. So those are like the not so good things I learned about myself. But the other things that I learned that were really good is that I am a very hopeful person. I I have the audacity to hope, as Barack Obama would say. I dream big. I always feel like I've been like that. Like, I'm like, oh, I want that. Like, if I see something, I want it. And I work hard for it. I'm very curious. And I also enjoy simple things. And one of the things you don't know about me, because you didn't know me at this time, and lots of people didn't, but before I went on mission, I was like this like 6-figure corporate gal that was like getting my hair done all the time and like shopping at Tiffany's and like having really nice, bags and shoes and dresses and everything. And I learned that those things weren't really important to me in the end. And so, I still have all like not so nice things in my closet, because I never got rid of them. So I still have them, but I don't need them. And they don't bring me happiness. I know that now. So like when I was in Bolivia and I was broke and poor, like not even with the O-R at the end, just like P-O, I was really happy. I was extremely content in that environment. And I learned that about myself, and I didn't know that.
All of that resonates with me so much. I feel like we are twins on a certain level on so much of that. And in particular, like that pressure to not only represent you, but everyone. Like I feel that all the time. Like at work, I often think, oh my God, I'm the only Latino on the team. Next time, if a Latino resume pops up on someone's desk, are they going to think of me and say, oh, well, do we want another one of Pavel in the office? You know what I mean?
Yes.
And if I am the quote unquote loud one or the aggressive one or the assertive one, do they want another one of me in the office? Right. And I used to try to, like, I took that pressure and almost tried to be like I just wasn't myself. Not that I'm aggressive or any of those things, but like you said, right? Like I would quiet my voice down and try to just make everyone as comfortable as they, as I could, try to avoid conflict and all of those things. And
you're on good behavior at all times, like the model employee kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to, like, I think that pressure goes back to what you mentioned, which is, the yearning for acceptance, which I don't think is just you. I think it's biological, right? Like at a very simple level, we all want to be accepted. We want to be accepted by our peers, by our groups, and we do certain things in order to like try to be accepted. So, I just want to empathize with you and say that you aren't alone in that,
For sure. No, I what you said is true. And I feel like that in Boca Cerrada no entra mosca was permeated my existence. I was like, oh, well, that's like kind of a better approach. That way I don't cause any trouble. I don't ruffle any feathers. And like, but I also didn't contribute anything either. Mm-hmm. So I stayed quiet for the good and the bad. Like I didn't complain, but I also didn't say, hey, I think I deserve that project. Hey, you should have given me that promotion. Hey, I can do that too. And I think I'm better at that. I didn't say those things either. And that's where I think I got myself in a heap of trouble.
Then you weren't being selected for those promotions, for those projects and all of those things. So when did that shift change, and how did that impact your career? I'm assuming in some positive ways.
Yeah, because the truth was that I feel like, I don't know why, but I expected that my managers knew that I wanted to get promoted, and that my managers knew that I wanted the special projects, and that my managers knew that I was like, wanted all this success. So I just said, they know it, so I don't need to say anything. I just need to work hard. So we all know that's like a really bad plan, and that doesn't work. So, and it was just like I said, I just hurt myself. No one else, like, I don't feel like in the end, the damage was collateral damage to me. And yeah, I do feel that I've learned to expose myself more, take more risks, because I want to achieve success. And so you have to take a risk to achieve success and say, hey, can you help me? Hey, I want to, be considered for that. Hey, will you, sponsor me? I know that people are starting to talk about who's getting promoted. I'm one of those people. Will you please, find nice things to say about me so that I can make it to the next round, or whatever the case is. So I definitely put my cards on the table more. I ask for help. I, you know, say, I voice my needs. And like, that's like a pretty basic thing if you think about it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know why I needed to be 50, years old to figure out that that's what I needed to be doing. But that's like a basic thing. And it all goes back to, the things that children are taught. Back at that elementary school where I used to work, it's just like, use your words. If you need something or you want something, just say it. And the worst thing that can happen is someone says, sorry, it's not your turn. Sorry, I already selected someone else. Sorry, not this time. And then you say, okay, well, I want you to know that for the next round, I want to be considered. So, let's work together to make that happen. And like, it's just, if you think about it, it's just like, I'm already feeling the feelings and having all the thoughts. So just say it out loud to someone else who can actually help you. And I like you. I like what you said. I don't remember how you said it, but the way I feel I was doing it is I was shrinking myself. I just was like, I'm not going to say anything. Maybe. So again, it was like the good and the bad. Like I wouldn't complain, but I also wasn't saying anything or like, standing out in any real material way. And so I feel like I don't shrink myself anymore. I don't let people figure out what I want. I don't leave it to chance. At this point where I am, I enter spaces and I say, I'm a Latina. I'm a hard worker. I am a high performer. I identify as that. And I say that now to people, anybody who will listen to me. I'm not that everybody does, but anybody who wants to listen, I would say I am a high performer. And my goal is to move up the ladder, to achieve success, to be more successful. So can you help me? Or can you get out of my way so that someone else can help me? Those are the options. So either help me or get out of my way. But I am shooting for the stars. And I let that know now in the spaces that I enter. And I feel like that is authentic Hady. That's what I should have been doing from day one, because that is who I am. And I always was like, I don't know, like, yeah, that's the visual that I get. It's like hiding, shrinking, like I don't want anybody to know that because then maybe I'm a target, or then people are gonna, question me, or, like push back and be like, what do you mean, you deserve that? Well, what have you done? And I just felt like I couldn't defend myself. Yeah. But that has changed. And yeah. Like I said, I just think it's my experiences that have caused that shift for me. Life experiences and, just poquito a poquito, taking those steps. And it's like, oh, well, what do you know? I said something and then something good happened. Well, let me do that some more. Let me try it again.
I wish that was a training that is held for in like corporate spaces, like asking, two things. Like one thing that I never knew how to do that therapy taught me how to do, and I wish like companies would train you on how to do it, is how to communicate my emotions. I never knew how to do that. And then communicating my needs. And I even struggle with that in romantic relationships. Yep. Like, for example, one of my needs is I just need a lot of alone time. Like, and that's both romantically and professionally. Like some people work really well in collaborative environments. And I remember like every company's like teamwork is one of our values and collaboration, blah, blah. I'm like, I can do that, but I also require a lot of time alone just to think, right? But if I never tell my manager that, then they're going to be like, well, Pavel's not a team player. He doesn't want to do this and that, right?
Yeah.
And also communicating my emotions in that, saying like, hey, in these team environments, I feel, I don't know, stifled. I don't know what the hell the word is, right? But like before because I think oftentimes we're labeled as like these negative stereotypes before we get the skills to be able to say, I feel, I don't know, intimidated, overwhelmed with so many people in the room, all of these sort of things. Like, I think there should be, because like sales teams, we get trained on like how to own the room and, build relationships, but like these like softer skills, I wish they would teach people, in particular people in our community, because I feel like that is so taboo, like talking about.
Yeah, because we don't really grow up in those environments. I remember when my mother would say, do this, and I'm like, but why? And she's like, because I said so. Porque yo dije, porque sí. I don't know if you ever had that experience, but like, that's not how, I'm sure that was not how she was not raised to use her words or express her emotions or her needs. So therefore we didn't really pick up that skill from her. And, And it's not like a bad thing, you know, there's just different ways of doing things. But yeah, I agree with you that those are not skills that are prevalent in our communities, and that definitely need to be taught. And I will tell you that in the school where I worked in the South Bronx, those skills were taught not only to the children, but to the parents too. And I used to work with those parents, and I would say, well, how are we going to, you know, I understand your frustration. So I got the feeling part. Let's talk about how we're going to constructively, you know, communicate this and try to change it, you know, and that was like eye-opening for some people, because it was just like, that wasn't necessarily an option, you know? So it was like a revelation to be like, oh, well, we're going to get to say it to somebody might actually care about how we feel, which is like news flash, and then would consider changing things so that I feel better. Oh my God, like that can happen. And it's like, yes, let's try and work to make that happen. And so I feel like, yes, those are skills that our communities really, really need, because yeah, then we are more prepared when we enter these spaces to, you know, have these skills and navigate better and like survive and, you know, and thrive. You know, forget survive, let's thrive in these environments. But we need to know how to do that. And those are important skills.
Oh my God, my mind is just racing right now. I'm imagining like like imagine going into work and like they changed the whole theme of like this conference room into like a kindergarten room full of like play toys and stuff like that. And they're like little kids there, but they're also like these just like employees like us. And we're all being trained to like, how is everyone feeling today? Let's use our words. I think that dynamic is like so funny, but I also think it's I honestly think that the kids would do better than us.
Imagine like talking about sharing power at work and like make it like, you know, the children get upset and they're like, you know, Susie isn't sharing, but you know,
Yeah.
that's how I feel too sometimes at work. Susie isn't sharing, and I want Susie and Billy and Bob to share with me the things that they, you know, some of the work they're doing, or some of the power they have, or some of the influence that they have. That's my issue too. I have the same beef. But anyway, I agree with you that that would be a very interesting social experiment, to say the least.
There's a plural training coming soon. It's coming soon.
I can get behind that.
Thank you. Anyway, I just want to wrap up with this final question. I love where you're at right now, especially just, you know, given your early journey, and just being a little bit uncomfortable, a little hidden almost, to where you are now, where you're just a lot more confident. Obviously, you're not done growing, right? We're all working on ourselves, but you know, as you look forward, though, what's one thing that continues to just inspire you and empower you to continue being your most authentic self?
Can I say more than one thing?
Yeah.
Okay. So like I said before, I think seeing like me being more honest and then seeing things change, that encourages me, because it's like, oh, I found the secret sauce. So now I can continue to do that, you know, maybe continue to iterate it and refine it a little bit more. But I feel like now I have a recipe for success. So that's number one. I'm very encouraged by that. I'm also encouraged by people that like are living their full authentic lives and being successful. Someone like you and so many of the guests that you bring onto your show, like they're encouraging to me, because they are putting their needs first, whether it's mental health, family, culture, you know, sexual identity, whatever it is, they're coming to like, they're accepting that in themselves. And then they're kind of in that spirit, allow other people to accept it too. And then they're just living fuller lives. So that's really inspiring. And I think, you know, companies are adjusting now. When I graduated from college in the 90s, we had to adapt to fit the company culture. And I think that has flipped a little bit. And I feel like now companies really encourage us to bring our full selves to work. And when we do that, you know, and you know, then we're sometimes, some companies, the ones that do it really well, they're really like not only encouraging us to bring our full self, but they're recognizing it and celebrating it. And that's when, you know, you really like hit a good spot. It's like, you know, Hispanic Heritage Month, and let's talk about this, and DEI, and let's talk about safe spaces, and let's talk about, you know, active allyship, and let's talk about mental health and all these things that are important. And the companies, you know, a lot of the good ones are starting to use the same words and talk about the same things that, you know, all of us are saying that's so important. And then I just want to shout out all the young professionals out there, because they're a large part of why I am not settling, because they really, they're leading with their example. They are very courageous and they are like not having it. And I feel like they have really motivated and inspired me to be like, oh snap, you know, that's not how it was when I started, but like I'm getting on that bandwagon. I like how they flow. They're doing it the right way. So shout out to all those Generation Y and the millennials that are just like, or is it Generation Z? I think it's Z, the Z and the millennials. Anyway, the young folks, I love them. I love where they're at. I love where their heads at, their hearts at. They're doing it the right way.